This is Turn 1 Thoughtseize. I'm Ahren.
And I'm Zach.
And this is episode 96, BNR, RNA, RIP KCI.
Can I get some more three-letter acronyms there real quick? Or I guess abbreviations?
I'm trying to think.
Come on, man. Bring it.
No.
All right, fine.
I'm out. Yep.
How about UWC for the return of blue-white control?
For blue-white control.
Yeah.
Blue-white control, yeah, man. For people that play blue-white control at a very high level, it's working.
All right, let the record show that the beginning title for this episode now contains a UWC somewhere in there.
Okay. All right, I'll change it right now. BNR, RNA, RIP, KCI, UWC. Boom. Done.
All right, perfect.
Quick housekeeping. So, it's been our last, we actually recorded our last show technically last year, even though it came out a couple weeks ago, and 1,000 things have happened between then and now. So on the one hand, it took us an extra week to get this show out, but in that time, a bunch of bananas stuff has happened. So we get to sort of do all of that in a relatively timely fashion, which we don't always get to do with the every other week schedule. So strap in, because we had a lot of information coming right for your ears.
Yeah, this is a big show today.
All right, so housekeeping. Deck Builder, our affiliate link, apparently was broken, and so it has been fixed. So you can go resume going to check out Deck Builder and give us our little vanity hit. It's so you have to do HTTPS. You can't just type in. So the address is store.decked.builder.com/T, the number one Thoughtseize. But you have to do HTTPS because they care about internet security or something. I don't know. That's just the way you have to do it. So if you do that, so if you had tried it before and it didn't work, it was probably that. I will leave a copy with the S and all that stuff in the show notes. So if people want to just click on it, that would be fine too. So as always, they're great. Been using their stuff bazillion years. Everything's fantastic. The Patreon, still up, still going strong. Thank you so much, obviously, to everybody who's currently a patron. If you are considering joining the Cabal, it is a great time. We've got a great crew of people that are sort of populating our little corner of the internet. You can do that at patreon.com/turn1thoughtseize, all spelled out. Come hang out in the Discord, talk about food and exercise, or the lack thereof in the training grounds. M's doing great. Everybody else kind of so. We're getting there. It's a process, right? Everything is a work in process. But we added a little section for standards so people can talk about standard stuff now. And like I said, just in general, we're kind of expanding, which we touched on a little bit before, expanding our umbrella to cover more stuff. And man, this set, Ravnica Allegiance, has got some doozies. This is a set that was it totally spoiled the last time we recorded? I don't know if it was.
No, it wasn't. We were going over cards at that point.
Okay. So just the cards that we had seen at the time were very clearly pushed, I guess would be a mild way of describing it. And, when cards get pushed for standard, they often end up in modern. And they're already showing up in modern. Between then and now, a number of decks have already adopted multiple cards from this set, and many more to come. So it's a bonanza. And because of that, also, like, there's like 10 standard decks, 15 standard decks right now. And that's like unprecedented in my recent experience of Magic. Like, just having that kind of diversity available in standard is crazy.
I agree.
It does probably make picking a deck difficult.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that right now, actually.
Every set, there is a rules update, and this rules update had a lot of kind of procedural stuff, but important stuff for modern players. And this is courtesy of one of our patrons, Mark, who I believe is a judge.
He is a judge.
He's an L2, I think.
Judge confirmed.
Judge confirmed. He sort of brought us through some scenarios, but the long and short of it is they changed the way that triggers with default actions resolve. So mostly the way that's going to affect us in Modern World is with pact triggers. So previously, if you missed a trigger that had a default action, like a pact trigger is the default action for you miss a trigger is you lose the game. That is no longer the case, which is weird because that's not the way that we're used to the card working. The way that it works now is if you miss your pact trigger, your opponent can decide to put that trigger on the stack any time that they have priority, or any time that priority would pass. So you can completely legally, somebody casts Summoner's Pact, go gets their Primeval Titan, does their shenanigans, and then you take your turn, they untap, draw, and then tap out to do something else. As soon as that happens, you can call a judge, explain that XYZ missed their pact trigger and that you would like to put that trigger on the stack now. And as long as that's actually the situation, obviously don't lie to a judge. As long as that is actually the situation, that other person will now lose the game because they are tapped out. They do not have any mana with which to pay for the trigger for their pact. And that, I think, is going to take some getting used to. It takes some of the the risky flavor out of pacts for me. Like, that was one of the things that I actually enjoyed about the card type, is there was that
See, I kind of disagree on that, though, because it feels to me like it doesn't really take the risk out of it. Because if you just straight up forget, your opponent can just put it on the stack at a time where you'll lose the game. It's not like you're never tapping out for the rest of the game after you cast your pack. Like, you're going to do something sometime, and they can put it on the stack then, you know?
Sure.
So it's like you still need to pay. Like, it's not like you're just scot-free out of this. The thing is it just gets rid of the feel-bad of, like, you know, you draw your card, and the second you draw your card, like, oh, shoot, I forgot to pay. And they're like, nope, you drew your card, you lose the game. It's like, no, I can just pay right there when I drew my card. Because you can still call a judge on yourself and be like, Judge, I forgot to pay for this. Opponent, would you like me to put this on the stack? So, like, I think this is mostly a good change. I mean, we'll see. Maybe there's some unintended consequences like nobody's seeing yet. But in my opinion, I'm pretty happy with this because it doesn't get you out of paying for your pack. Like, if you don't pay for your pack, it's still pretty likely you're going to lose the game. Like, if your opponent knows you didn't pay, they'll just, they'll find the time. But if you just, like, blow through it too quick. Like, I had this happen to me at F&M the other night where I cast a Summoner's Pact, drew my card for turn, and then realized, shoot, I didn't pay, and then lost the game. And it was like, literally as I was drawing the card, I was like, oh no. And I had a lethal attack on board that turn, like I was going to win, and I had to go to the next game. So, that's a feel bad.
Yes.
And it definitely is. It's different because Magic has always been in this spot, at least in like competitive REL, where it's like it's really important you remember your triggers. It's going to be like game losses and match losses and stuff like that. And now it's more beginner friendly, which I think is good, but it's going to feel different to franchise players for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess there has been obviously for a long time that sort of tension where like changes. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when, you know, like damage on the stack wasn't a thing anymore, and they took mana burn away, and people were like, "Oh, this is gonna mess up the game." Like I get it, and I'm not. It's not that I do not have the capacity to complain in that way, because I certainly do, just not about these particular things. So basically, if you're going to play with pacts, be aware, and the remedy is don't forget your triggers, and this will never come up.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. Like, if you just play the way the card is intended, nothing's changed, right? But one more point on this, and I think, you know, it's relevant to the discussion. I think this is a good change, too, because now a lot of the way people experience the game is online, be it Magic Online or Arena. And in those places, you don't have to remember your trigger, right? Like,
sure,
you have a pack trigger that just happens on your upkeep online, and you can choose to pay or not pay, and then you either win or like continue playing or lose the game, right? So it's not your responsibility online to remember. So it's weird that the paper experience and the online experience are pretty different, and I like this as it kind of gets the game closer to the online experience by having some forgiveness for you know, not remembering this thing that you don't have to remember when you play online. But also, like, it doesn't just like get you out of having to do it at all. Like, your opponent can still just use it to win the game if you mess up and forget it. So I like that they're moving more towards, you know, beginner friendly matching online experience. I do think that's good.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of like non-functional errata. There was 2 functional pieces of errata. The main thing was they actually changed the way that a Johnny's Pridemate works. A Johnny's Pridemate reads on the card, whenever you gain life, you may put a +1/+1 counter on a Johnny's Pridemate. Like, that's the way the physical card is printed. The Oracle text for it now says, whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on a Johnny's Pridemate. This was something that was changed primarily because it is being played heavily in Standard. It is confusing for people that are like trying to learn the game.
It's not confusing. They changed it because it's just so many clicks on Arena. It's so unnecessary for this card to be like, you just gain, you attack with a bunch of creatures, add lifelink, boom. Do you want to put a +1/+1 counter on a Johnny's Pridemate 3 times? And you're like,
yes.
Yep, I do want this. And it's just like, there are so few situations that come up where you're not going to put a +1/+1 counter on your Johnny's Pridemate. And all of the situations I can think of in Modern are like pretty unanimously for it to be like 0 power. Like, Ensnaring Bridge is like the only real thing I can think of that is like a Modern relevant thing. So, he's already 2 power. It's like, I guess you could just never put anything on it, but it's so easy for Ensnaring Bridge decks to get below 2 cards in hand that it seems so irrelevant for Modern. I get that it's like a move for the game that they're like eradicating something towards Arena, but again, like we just said with the last thing, I think that's good personally. I mean, other people have other opinions, but for the game as a whole, I'm happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
Yep.
BNR, we get to do a little victory dance. Not a mean-spirited victory dance, but we were 100% right victory dance.
How about a celebration victory dance? Because Modern just got so much more enjoyable.
Yes.
I'm not gonna. Okay, well, please tell the people what happened.
All right, as we suggested way back in June, I believe it was, Krark Clan Ironworks, the card, was banned. Very exciting.
Yeah, slow clap for that.
Yeah, whew. Just big build up. The BNR announcement was extensive. Ian Duke usually writes them, and this was no exception. Basically, he laid out the entire process for how they came to this decision. And some people had like a couple of points that were like nitpicked, and, but the bottom line is they had every reason to do it, no reason not to do it. It was inevitable. This was the time. And so that's it. Some of the reasoning was like, aside from it, mostly was like time. So like any eggs deck, this is like another cautionary thing, right? I have said many times in the past, do not play these decks if you're going to play competitively, because eventually that deck will get banned. All decks like this that take a million years to do their thing, it is not going to be allowed to continue. Like, you are not entitled to monopolize other people's time, like on a micro scale in your opponent and in a like macro tournament organizer. You're just not. So I get it. I understand that that's how you want to enjoy the game, and you're totally free to do that at your house where you are not taking up 900 other people's time to play your 200 IQ deck. Sorry, it's just not going to happen. The important sort of snippets, or the snippets that I thought were important, are that they had actually considered 3 possible cards to ban, which is Ancient Stirrings, Mox Opal, and Ironworks itself. Given that, and I'm quoting here, given that Modern has looked healthy and diverse at many levels of play outside of Ironworks' dominance at the Grand Prix level, we decided to target the card that only affects the Ironworks deck. And then later in the thing, they come back to Ancient Stirrings, Mox Opal, and he says, bear in mind that this is based on the current state of the metagame, and that Ancient Stirrings and Mox Opal are not being given a free pass in perpetuity. While we have no current plans to take action against these 2 cards, we will continue to monitor the health of the environment and the strength of the decks that use them. If the metagame reaches a point where we determine these cards are doing more to suppress archetype diversity than enable it, we will certainly revisit this discussion. So, without instituting a formal watch list, there's your watch list.
Well, hold on. So, yes, go ahead. Yes, you're right. Mox Opal, Ancient Stirrings on their watch list. In my mind, though, before this, Quark Clan Ironworks was definitely offensive. And the card, we discussed at length in one of those previous episodes, where the card has all of these weird don't use the stack sacrifice rule applications that don't make a whole lot of sense, can't be responded to, can't be pithing, all of that. Just there's all this weird stuff with it. So that card being gone, I am fine with. Get that out of here. But in my mind, before this, the 3 most powerful cards in Modern were pretty clearly Ancient Stirrings, Faithless Looting, and Mox Opal. And none of them got banned. They explained why, but Faithless Looting is not even mentioned here, which I think is very odd because, while Ironworks was definitely dominating, Faithless Looting looked like it had taken a turn towards the more dominant card, recently at least. So it's weird that Faithless Looting is not on this list, and I think it's only not because they just talked about the Ironworks deck, so they only talked about cards that were considered from the Ironworks deck. And I would strongly recommend anybody else reading this to read between the lines. And right now, this list of cards to watch is also containing Faithless Looting. So, Opal, Stirrings, and Faithless Looting.
I would agree with that. I think that's reasonable, considering that, just not only Arclight Phoenix, but also some of the cards that we're going to talk about have just added more. You just get to keep doing it. It's just there are no brakes on the Phoenix train. Deck's just really good. Three spells is literally nothing. It is reliable in standard, which means it is just borderline trivial in Modern. There are, of course, winners and losers. The winners are mainly the decks that either had bad KCI matchups or had were getting hit by splash hate which was mainly like graveyard hate.
Well, also, other winners are worse versions of KCI too, right?
Sure.
It's like why would you play this deck? You can play KCI. KCI wins 60% of its matches, and you're playing one that wins 52. Like, what are you doing?
Sure. So Blue Red Phoenix, obviously, having this is actually this was a patron question that we can answer now. Somebody asked what does the post KCI world look like for Blue Red Phoenix, and I was like, it looks amazing. So less graveyard hate for Phoenix.
Okay, hold on. Let me give my rundown on this, because
right.
I kind of disagree with this little part.
Oh,
so
okay. Right.
when I was building sideboards before this, you were always so stretched between having so many cards for KCI, because you were just always at a disadvantage. That deck was good against everything, so you needed all of these cards for it. So you're using all these sideboard slots to beat KCI. And so what did you do to do that? Well, you cut other hate, right? Like I was like, well, I kind of want to play 3 Rest in Peace. I'll play 2, and then an extra Ceremonious, or just other stuff like amulets. Like I need at least 1 rare Thar, maybe 2. Other way, like a bunch of braids, just so I can kill some artifacts and have a chance against KCI. Like all of these decks that had to play all this extra hate for KCI can go back to the normal amount of artifact hate they have to play for just like normal affinity. And now they get to have that extra graveyard card. So I don't think that Blue-Red Phoenix gets better in the sense that there's less hate for it. I just think it gets better in the sense that its best competition is gone. Like, the format right before it was banned, it looked like there were, 2 decks that were just way better than everything else. It was Blue-Red Phoenix and KCI. And now, it's just Blue-Red Phoenix. So, Blue-Red Phoenix got better, but now it's kind of occupying this spot we've seen other decks occupy. Death Shadow was there for a little bit, and then Humans kind of had it, and then, KCI had it, and it's it's this spot that it's you're just the unquestioned best deck. Can the metagame adapt and beat you, or are you just too good and need to be banned? And, in Shadow and Humans' case, the metagame adapted and beat it, or just, knocked them off their perch, if you will. And in KCI's case, nobody could do that, so that one got banned. And now we're going to see what happens with Blue-Red Phoenix. I think it's the unquestioned best deck, but that also means it has to see more sideboard hate. So, we'll see what happens with that. Another big winner I have for this metagame is Ensnaring Bridge Lantern of Insight deck.
It becomes playable.
Well, that was the thing, was its worst matchup by far was KCI. It had, no chance to beat KCI. It just could not beat that deck. And Lantern was a very powerful deck. In fact, it was one of the best decks in the format. It won a Pro Tour, less than a year ago, or maybe about a year ago at this point. And it just fell off the face of the earth because it had 0% against... It was 0% against KCI. There was nothing the deck could do. It had no help. All the artifact hate, double hit it. So, it would hurt itself in an effort to beat KCI. It just couldn't beat that deck. So people stopped playing it. They just played KCI instead because it was a better Moxable deck. Well, now, now it can come back. Now it's primed for a return. And it's primed for a return in a format that's pretty creature heavy now that, the premier non-creature combo deck is gone.
Yep. Agree on all points. If you were sitting around lamenting the demise of Lantern, well, good news, it is demised no more. And also, you're going to have this nice little grace period of a couple of weeks probably where people just totally forgot that the deck existed. And you can just steamroll a couple local tournaments.
Oh, 100%. I was going to say, if you know how to play Lantern and haven't played in a while, it might be now is the time to pick it back up. And the other thing too is we actually saw Lantern kind of evolve in this time. Grixis became a decently popular deck. I think it led MTGO in trophies for a little bit. At least the trophy leader was playing it, and I think it kind of felt like the next evolution of Lantern, but it was a very different deck than Lantern. While kind of using the same strategy, it was strange, right? But it's interesting that there was 2 ways to kind of go about that same just lock your opponent out with an ensnaring bridge strategy. So I'm interested to see, if those two decks kind of meld together and become the same deck at this point, or if they're just two distinct archetypes going forward.
I mean, the Grixis War deck is even more just interminable. Like, I've not been, I've said many an unkind word about Lantern decks. But at least they can win in a reasonable amount of time. Like once they have locked you out, like they can mill you 5, 6, 7 cards a turn. Like it's quick. And like once you figure it out, you can scoop it up. The Grixis War deck does not have that. I've seen versions of it that are like bottled cloister elixir of immortality, and you just you wait 50 turns for somebody to deck themselves.
Yeah, I mean, Grixis War is it's something, man. It's one of the most miserable decks to play against ever, because it has the same, I don't know, maybe it's slightly different, where KCI just had this you're dead situation happen, where you just be playing and all of a sudden, boom, you're dead. Like, the game is still going to go 10 more minutes while they figure out how to kill you, but it was effectively over. And now you get to actually play through that 10 minutes of them figuring out how to kill you. Like, you get to make game actions, I guess, but you're still probably dead. So, in my mind, they messed up this banning. That's kind of what I was going to get to with all these ensnaring bridge decks coming back here. I really think it was Mox Opal's time to go. That card is offensive. Don't get me wrong, Krark-Clan Ironworks had issues with it, which we have discussed, but at the same time, it is a 4-mana sorcery speed spell that is very powerful, but is weak to hate and things of that nature. And the thing that just made it so broken was just the free 0-mana acceleration of Opal that you could also sack to make 2 more mana and then cost 0, so it was just always recurred with Scrap Shell. It was just, Opal was just the key piece that just broke the deck. It just made it so busted. And I think, honestly, the deck without Opal would have been a fine deck to have in the format. Still not great to play against, but at least a real deck, if you will. That's just just at a reasonable power level. But now Opal will be back to to doing unfun things like dumping your hands super quick so that you have an ensnaring bridge in play that just effectively ends the game. So yeah, we'll see where that goes, I guess.
Yeah. So this, while you were talking, I was looking up a list, and it has, the main deck has 0 win conditions. None.
Well,
Ipnu, I'm sorry. You can recur Ipnu Rivulet.
That was what it did, was it had Ipnu Rivulet, Crucible of Worlds, and Tech Edge. So it would literally just destroy your lands and mill out your deck. And
4 cards at a time every turn. Or every other turn. Once a turn cycle.
Yeah, I mean, it's miserable. I don't know what you want me to tell you. It's so bad. That said, it does use Bottled Cloister.
I love that card. It's super cool.
Well, the thing is that card, draws a lot of cards, so this deck, without its graveyard, is really susceptible to milling itself and doing nothing.
I would like to think that the people that play this deck are smart enough to know that when they have locked themselves out. The only problem is they play 3 this particular list plays 3 main deck engineered explosives, and they've got 4 Spire of Industry, 3 Glimmer Void, and 4 Mox Opals, which means they could conceivably EE for 4 and blow up their own Bottled Cloister, like if it came to that.
I mean, sure. Yeah, the deck obviously has a plan and can do stuff, but it is susceptible to graveyard hate. Like, we're fast approaching a format where main deck graveyard hate is going to be insanely good. Like, it was already good. Like, we already talked about me playing this main deck Rest in Peace deck, and now it got better because Rest in Peace was good against KCI, but, like, it wasn't good enough. Like, KCI still could easily beat a Rest in Peace. It was the Stony Silence that let KCI out, mostly. But, like, you know, Rest in Peace is good against Blue-Red Phoenix. It's good against Lantern. It's good against this Bottle of Cloister deck. It's good against Hardened Scales to some extent. It's good against, you know, Black-Green decks playing Tarmogoyf. There's, like, a lot of spots where, you know, main deck Graveyard Hate is pretty good. And, you know, along those lines, like, I've been playing Amulet Titan recently, and I've gone up to 2 Bajuka Bogs, and it's just been really good. And I just think that's, like, where this format is going to go all of a sudden, where it's just, like, any way you can just, like, incidentally get Graveyard Hate in your deck is going to be really powerful.
Yeah, so I guess that's something I didn't put on in this show sheet that we could talk about, which is the main deck surgical discussion. It's probably literally another half an hour of that whole mooing. This was happened like a week and a half ago. You were in on it.
I was.
I guess we can bottom line it. So basically, somebody.
You know what? Let's actually hit on that. Let's hit on that after the winners and losers section.
Okay. All right. So
let's finish this. What other decks do we have as winners after Lantern?
Tron, definitely. Like, their cards do things against decks again.
Yeah, I mean, Tron didn't lose Ancient Stirrings, which it definitely. I mean, that card's really good in Tron. It's very important for the deck.
Jund.
Well, Tron. Hold on, one more point. Tron also gets to play Relic of Progenitus at very little cost. So,
yep.
Point in Tron's favor.
Sure. Jund, just like, and Jund, I guess, Jund in quotes, like Jund, Mardu, Green Black, the like fair mid range decks actually have the ability to win again.
Yeah, I mean, all of those decks were so bad against KCI. Jund was so bad against KCI. It had almost no chance against that deck. And now it can beat it again. I mean, now its worst matchup by miles is out of the format, so it got better. How much better is still up for debate, but it is definitely better than it was.
And then Hardened Scales, like Affinity Hardened Scales, I think they got better because there will be less artifact hate. So, you know, if people aren't in a world where people are playing like 3 to 4 Stony Silence / Abrade / whatever, like, that's not a world that Hardened Scales wants to live in. So the fact that people are going to be down to probably 3 to 4 pieces maybe, and some of it's going to be incidental to other things, is definitely a vote in their favor, especially since when they get to do their thing, it happens very quickly. So, you know, there's more of a mischance where people are going to be like, well, you know, I got to keep this 5 because it has a Stony Silence. But, like, also, you might just be dead.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, too, is just, like, this is one of the archetypes I'm thinking of, too. It's along Lantern's point. It was like, well, why are you playing this Mox Opal deck? There was a better Mox Opal deck. Well, now all of a sudden, like, hey, you know, there isn't necessarily a better Mox Opal deck than Affinity Hardened Scales. Like, you can make the debate Lantern is better, but it's also just, like, so different.
Right.
Like, and the win percentage isn't that much higher that it's just like, yeah, like, if you want to play Affinity / Hardened Scales now, go for it. You want to innovate on those archetypes, go for it. Like, yep. It's just a real, like, viable deck in the format again.
The losers, Infect, KCI was basically a buy for Infect, so, like, that's kind of a bummer because they don't They don't get to just like pre-sign the match slip.
Well, the other thing too, like, so you're right, like Infect had this weird situation going on where it was absurd. Like, there were two good decks, like, not good decks, but two, like, solidly above the rest decks in the format, and Blue-Red Phoenix and KCI, right? And Blue-Red Phoenix is very good against Infect, and KCI was very bad against Infect, and the one that was very bad, like, went away, right? So now there's just
right.
the one that's really good against it. Like, you know, a card Infect does not want to see you have in your main deck is Gutshot. That is for sure.
Yeah.
And a deck that plays a lot of flyers.
Gutshots
doesn't like that. So, Blue-Red Phoenix being the best deck in the format is bad for Infect. I would suggest cutting back on your Infect play at this moment.
Yeah. Whew. A lot of Gutshots. Man, that feels bad. And then Blue-Eye Control, same thing. Like, Blue-Eye Control, because of one, being able to main deck 8 pieces for KCI at very little deck building cost. Just having Ceremonious Rejection and, you know, like...
Well, okay. So I'm going to say that I don't actually think Blue-Eye Control is necessarily that big of a loser.
I don't think it is either, but it's...
I was going to say, it's still a loser in the fact that it's just not good. So, like... you know, like, it is a loser deck, right? No.
No, I think it's, I think it just lost.
It lost a good matchup. I agree with you.
Right, exactly.
Like, I don't think it's a big loser in the sense that, like, oh my god, you can't play Blue-Eye Control anymore. Like, I think you just changed the sideboard and you get to keep playing the medium deck that it is. Believe me, I played a lot of Blue-Eye Control. It's incredibly medium. It's fine. It's, like... It's a deck you can definitely top 8 a tournament with if you run well, and if you know how to play it, and if you dedicate some time and practice, and, you know, a bunch of things happen. Like, yeah, it definitely works, and you can win, but at the same time, like, it's not really doing anything super powerful right now, outside of playing 4 and 5 mana Planeswalkers, and that can be powerful, but, you know, it did lose a matchup that was pretty favorable to some extent, so... Yeah, I mean, it's definitely down a peg, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, yeah, we like to maximize our good matchups and minimize our bad ones. So, yeah. I will also just sort of do the thing. It is very tempting to do the Ding Dong the Witch is Dead kind of dance on the grave of KCI. And that, to the extent that it is not mean-spirited or hurtful, is fine, I think. That said, having your deck get banned really sucks. You know, and you will not find a more virulent hater of Splinter Twin than me. I was ecstatic when it got banned. I felt really bad for the people that played it because...
yeah, I agree with you. Splinter Twin was different, like, from the point I'm about to make, and I did feel bad for Splinter Twin people, because Splinter Twin was almost like a cult. Like, there's so many people... There still is, yeah. People still clamor for it all the time, and people loved Twin for whatever reason. I thought it was miserable. I'm with you. Even though, like, I like blue decks, I really did not like that deck and what it did to the format, but... I did feel bad for those people, but, you know, KCI kind of was the same way, but I can't, like, I know so many people that played KCI, and outside of the fact that they won with the deck, I don't know anybody that really enjoyed it that much. Like, very few people enjoyed it, and everyone said it should be banned because it was just miserable from so many different, like, factors as to how a deck could be miserable. And the other thing about it going away is that the expensive cards that got banned from your deck, outside of obviously KCI, which was like a $20 card or a $25 card, something like that. Outside of that, all the expensive cards are still playable in Modern. So it's like, yeah, you lost your deck, but you kind of saw it coming, and it's not even like the whole deck is invalidated. And this was one of the reasons why I felt really bad for people that had Summer Bloom before, was like, outside of the fact that you could like put Primeval Titan into Scapeshift, like every other card in that deck was just completely invalidated. Like, you didn't use any of them anywhere else outside of, like, one Cavern of Souls it played or whatever, you know? So back when that happened, yeah, I felt really bad. But, you know, as we've kind of seen, a lot of the times when a deck gets nerfed, like, it still exists. Like, Amulet Titan ended up still being a deck. In fact, it's a good one. And, you know, Infect had Gitaxian Probe banned, and it was gone for a while, but it came back and won an Invitational, and it's just a deck in the format again. And Dredge had Grave Troll banned, and then, you know, got a new Toy and Creeping Chill and was instantly the best deck in the format again. So it was like... yeah, I mean, you know, the bannings stink, and obviously with KCI, you know, it stinks losing your deck that you were just winning a ton with. And yeah, I do feel bad for the people that lost money on it. That's, you know, that's not great. But like you said, you know, people have been talking about it being banned for years. It was the only talk for a while. Not years, like a full 6 months. It's just been talked about getting this ban. So yeah, I'm not going to say like I definitely feel bad for the people it happened to, but at the same time, like, they kind of knew it was coming, and it's not like, you know, every card they owned was invalidated. Like, you can still just go build Lantern or Grixis Whir or Affinity and still use the opals you bought, and that card's still going to be expensive. It didn't lose all its value.
No, I would guess that it in fact lost none of its value.
I mean, I think it lost a little bit, but not much. I mean, it was like a $120 card. It's probably down to like $110. Let's hit on that Maindeck Surgical discussion you brought up.
I posted, as I sometimes do, a hyperbolic statement to begin a discussion.
See, I don't know. I'm not going to give you credit on this one because I do know that you do that, but on this one, I don't know. I think it's hard to say this one's a hyperbolic statement because you've actually made this point on the podcast before.
Oh, yeah. No. I mean, it's... Okay,
and like when the other thing too is like when you made that point, like it was right, and I agreed with it before.
Right? Yeah. And so that's like, it's such a weird world. I said, Seth Saffron Olive posted, the newest trend in Modern is people playing Maindeck Surgical Extraction. I've run into it multiple times this week in different decks on Magic Online. So I then said, this is bad deck building. I don't care if you sometimes lose game 1 to Phoenix. Stop. Then, a couple of my friends came in to troll me.
But then we had a bunch of pros actually comment like, whoa, right, wait a minute.
Right, so then the actual discussion started. So Corey Burkhardt jumps in, and he's like, I don't actually think that we're far from this being correct if you have access to interaction that puts the important cards in the enemy graveyard. I'm close to playing the main deck in Grixis because the graveyard is just an extension of many decks' hands at this point.
And that's where I was going to agree with him, was that, and still do agree with him, and that was part of why I finally gave in, put down my beloved Snapcaster Mage, and main deck Rest in Peace in Blue-White. And it was all part of the same idea that we've gotten to a point where just people realize that like one of the most powerful things you can do in Magic is your hand size is maxed out at 7. You can't go above 7 cards in hand for longer than one turn cycle, right? You just hit a discard step and you have to get rid of some of them. And there are decks that, you know, can just win with their deck, you know, their entire deck in their hand, like Ad Nauseam, for example. But for the most part, it's hard to go above 7 cards. And in a game like Magic that just rewards card advantage, just having more cards, being able to use your graveyard as a hand is super, super powerful. It just is. And it's like you look at Dredge where they just have all these spells in the graveyard. It's like, oh, do I want to, you know, dredge a Death Touch Flyer that's going to, you know, drain you for 3 and I'm going to gain 3 and it's also going to put a Fireball in my graveyard? Or do I want to dredge a Life from the Loam so I can get some extra lands so that I can, you know, cast the Conflagrate for more? Or like, do I want a Faithless Looting so that I can try and find like an Assassin's Trophy to deal with, you know, the Ensnaring Bridge or whatever? Like, they have all these options in their graveyard at all times. And there are other decks that do this too, where we see like, you know, this Grixis Whir deck, for example, that is playing Crucible of Worlds so that it can kind of play any land at any time. And, you know, Phoenix that, you know, has Faithless Looting and uses, it's less so, but like it's also using, you know, the graveyard as an outlet to put a 3/2 flying haste creature in play for 0 mana. So, there are just a lot of decks that do this, and KCI kind of did it too, where it was like it had scrap trawlers like this tutor. It's like, oh, do I need to get back Opal, or do I need to get back Ichor Wellspring so I can generate some card advantage, or am I trying to get back Chromatic Stars so that I can fix my colors, or whatever it is, or they have their chains, or all that stuff. However it worked. All these decks were using the graveyard as an extension of their hand. And, when you see that, you have to come up with ways to beat those cards. And the interesting thing that, if you just go look at the modern card pool, just all of these cards you have access to so many cards. You'd actually be shocked at how few of them interact with the graveyard based on how many of the, versus how many of the decks in Modern do that, use the graveyard extensively. And it's you'll see these, all these charms and modal cards, and they all will be kill target creature, or counter target spell, or destroy target artifact or enchantment, or, draw X cards and discard X, or, whatever they say. They have all these modes. But very few of them interact with the graveyard, and, in fact, very few cards do. There's only a couple cards in Modern that interact with the graveyard profitably and see play. It's I can kind of name them all in my hands, Grafdigger's Cage, Relic of Progenitus, Rest in Peace, Surgical Extraction, Leyline of the Void, Rakdos Charm, maybe. That's 6 cards. It's less than 10, but Modern is this, 20,000 card pool format. I don't know if that's right, but that's a good approximation of the card pool in Modern. Probably close to that.
It's deep, yeah.
So it's strange that, and we've seen cards recently from Wizards that have printed a ton of cards like this. Night of Autumn's a good example, where it's oh, do you want a 4/3, or do you want to gain some life so you can beat burn, or do you want to destroy an artifact or enchantment so that, you can, kill the cranial plating or whatever you're up against that you need to destroy. But, these modal cards very rarely say exile target X thing from the graveyard, or, interact with the graveyard. And, we're starting to see more, but also the other thing too is that unless a deck uses the graveyard extensively, that mode is always terrible. And that's the point you were making with Surgical Extraction, is that interacting with the graveyard when a deck isn't using its graveyard unfairly is actually just very bad in Magic. It's not a good thing to do. So using the graveyard puts all these people in a tough spot, I guess. So you're starting to see this trend of all these decks that use the graveyard but don't rely on it 100%. And not all the decks are exactly like that, but a lot of the decks were, where it was KCI, for example, you could Relic of Progenitus them and Tormod's Crypt them and Bajuka Bog them all you wanted. It didn't stop them. Rest in Peace and Leyline of the Void did to some extent. Until they removed those cards, they couldn't really combo through them. But there was very few cards that was it. The cards that just completely got rid of the graveyard, it was Rest in Peace and Leyline of the Void. Those were it. So I don't know. It just the whole format kind of is just preying on this. There aren't very many good modal cards to get rid of the graveyard, and the cards that do that are generally bad to play. So you're going to win game 1 greater than 60% of the time, or whatever it was, and then after that, you just got to figure out how to win. And, another deck, Storm, for example, would do something exactly like that, where game 1, they're this Past in Flames deck, and game 2, they're just kind of this weird, value-y pieces of the puzzle, multiple Grape Shot You deck, or whatever they did. So, with that trend going on, it was well, why are we losing game 1 all the time? Well, it's because your opponent just is well, you're not going to interact with me this way game 1. You can't. There aren't cards that let you do this. So I'm going to, beat you game 1, and then I'm going to have a plan for the graveyard hate you're definitely bringing in. It was just this played out pattern. So it was well, how do you jump that? Well, put graveyard hate in your deck game 1, and then see what happens. And as it turned out, decks just weren't ready for that. They couldn't cope. And it was very good for me when I did it. And, Surgical, I think you were right about Surgical being pretty, bad, because when it's bad, it's so bad. But at the same time, we are getting to a spot in Modern where there are ways to convert cards that don't do anything into cards that are cards in that matchup. Faithless Looting is a great example, or Jace the Mind Sculptor, another good example of this. And, just ways like, anything that draws a card, discards it. Another one, Bedlam Reveler. Great example of this. It's just like, oh, this card's dead. I'm going to pitch it and draw 3, So there were ways, to kind of get around this. And in those decks that had an outlet to get around that, it just, made a lot of sense to kind of start main decking some of that hate. So, I don't know. I think your point was generally right for, I don't know, the 8 years of Modern previously, but we had just hit this spot where it just made sense.
Right. And so, Caleb Durward jumped in and he's like, yep, I'm playing him in Mardu with Molten Rain. And I was like, yep. I was like, you're 0% to ever beat Tron game 1. So sure. And you have Faithless Looting. If it doesn't work, then you just pitch it. It gives you information. So Sam Black mentioned it. He was like, Lantern used to play it, then stopped playing it. And then he was like, I didn't like that. So he put him back in.
Yeah, you get all the copies. Well, the other thing too is we have started to move to this point too. The other point about Surgical is that now we're kind of getting to this point where there's so many decks that are just named after one card, and against all of those decks, Surgical is actually good. It's so strange because that's just, for example, if you put Surgical Extraction in Standard, it would see almost no play, close to 0, maybe as a sideboard card, but still probably not a good one. And it just, Modern has just got to this weird spot where it's just so linear, and there's so many decks based around one card that Surgical was actually just good. Which is, strange to me because it's, just looks bad. But, at the same time, it's you played against KCI, you played against Ad Nauseum, you played against, Amulet Titan, you played against, Amulet Titan's 2 cards, right? But you take that Titan, the deck doesn't do anything.
It's not great.
Yeah. You play against Tron, which, obviously a bunch of cards, but you take some of the Tron, one of the Tron lands. The deck doesn't do anything. You play against any Ensnaring Bridge deck. Take the Ensnaring Bridge. Yeah, their deck doesn't do anything. Blue-Red Phoenix kind of different, but at the same time, taking Phoenix for, a very, really does neuter the deck.
Oh, sure.
And it just was people found a way to just so consistently do the same thing over and over again with their deck by just playing all these tutor cards and all these cantrips that it just the actual deck size of decks in Modern, while still being 60 cards, they just felt like 40 card decks just at how consistently they're doing the same thing. And that, when the format goes to a place like that, Surgical actually becomes good. So
yeah, somebody piped in and was like, when things in Legacy get really bad, you can tell because people are main decking Red Blast, and I think that's kind of the best parallel, right? Is if you're gonna play a fair deck or even a mostly fair deck, and everybody else, whatever, 50% of the time or 40% of the time, you're going to come up against a degenerate deck that you're just going to auto lose to game 1, then that becomes a realistic choice. So I had been doing something similar with Engineer Explosives. And who was it? Willie Adel, maybe? Somebody did really well, during a period of time when you couldn't buy a win with Abzan. Somebody went in and just did amazing in one of the challenges, and it was just bone stock Abzan, the fairest of the fair, curving out to Siege Rhino kind of deck, but it had 3 main deck Engineered Explosives, and those Engineered Explosives just mopped up against the stuff that it was really soft against. Affinity, Infect, I think Lantern was a deck at the time. So what do you do as Abzan against Lantern. Like, get there with Noble Hierarch beats, I guess. But, like, that's not the game you want to play. EE on 1 blows up their universe. Great. All right, let's play some Magic. Get Rhino'd. So I am ready to be wrong, despite the way that I presented it in that particular instance. I am ready to be wrong. I was ready to be convinced. So now I will say, qualified. If you are playing a super fair deck, and you know, in the Phoenix world that we will very soon be living in, if you would like to play 1, maximum 2 surgical extractions in the main deck, and you have some way of getting rid of them if you don't need them, like Faithless Looting, knock your socks out. That's not a euphemism. That's not a saying. Knock your socks out is not a thing. Knock yourself out. There we go. That is what I was trying to say. So there you go. You now have my completely unnecessary blessing for making this like meh in a vacuum choice about deck building. Be free, my children.
Let's get to what the people really came here for, though.
Yes, Allegiance. Ravnica Allegiance is an insane set of Magic cards. It also, like, as we go through this, I want to point out a side comment that was made by Tom Ross, because somebody was like, "Oh, Rakdos is really good in like draft or something like that," and he was like, "You should have seen it before, like, we play tested it, and I got 4 of the cards nerfed." And I was thinking in my head, like, because it is really good, like, the Rakdos cards are really strong, and I was like, this is the nerfed version of these cards.
I played it all weekend, and I think there are some powerful Rakdos cards for constructed, but like the actual Rakdos guild, I don't think is that powerful. I think it actually looks like it got nerfed to me, like in limited anyway. Where it does feel like a lot of like, it feels like some of the cards are still powerful, but it feels to me like noticeably like it was missing something, because I don't think Rakdos is actually great in limited. I think it's fine,
just fine.
Dude, it's strange. I don't know. It's one of the stranger feeling sets I've ever played with, because not sets, but like guilds. Like it feels to me like a slightly better Selesnya, how Selesnya was last format, where like some of the cards are just so bad, like it doesn't seem good, but like at the same time, the good cards are so good that it's worth playing, and like it's better than Selesnya was. Don't get me wrong, but I can kind of feel the nerf when I was playing with it.
I did not make it to pre-release, so I have not yet experienced it. I haven't done anything with it like online. So, all right. Without further ado, did we have any overlap in our?
No, we went
we did.
Different. I guess these are top 9s.
There was supposed to be 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There should be another row. Hey, we both get another choice.
Yes. All right, let's cut this. So these are different top 10s.
So top 10s, and mine are in no particular order as per usual, because I can't choose.
That's fair. I did order mine somewhat. At the same time, it's more just like the cards I'm pretty sure of are up top.
Okay.
And then the ones below that, I don't really like. I have them in an order, but I wouldn't be shocked if my number 9 is better than my number 6 or whatever. But the ones at the top, I'm pretty sure of that they're just going to be modern cards. So, yeah, we'll see how this goes.
Okay.
What would you like to lead us off, Ahren?
Sure. Because Delver he's had a rough time lately.
Or for like multiple years?
When when Probe was legal, Vrug Delver was dope. Like,
okay, so
I had a blast with that deck. It was so much fun. Losing Probe really hurt that deck.
Okay.
However, they printed, like, in true Simic fashion, right? Like, normally they just crisscross, stuff. So this time they took a Gurmag Angler and a Delver of Secrets, and they smushed it together, and then a Salamander came out, which was very unexpected as far as I'm concerned. So Terramander is the first on my list. It is a flying man. It is a 1/1 flyer 4/1, and it has creature type Salamander Drake. Neither one is relevant at all. It has 7 and a blue, adapt 4. The adapt ability is the Simic keyword from this, and the adapt is if this creature has no +1/+1 counters on it, put X. So it's adapt X, put X +1/+1 counters on them. So you can only do it once, with a couple of exceptions, but you can do it at instant speed in this case. I don't know if all of them are instant speed, but this one definitely is. And this ability costs 1 less to activate for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. So it is 7 and a blue. Each instant or sorcery card in your graveyard cuts that down by 1. So you play this guy out. He's a 1/1 flyer. So already head and shoulders above Delver. Has essentially the same deck building restrictions that you just want heavy spells. But instead of turning into a 3/2 flyer on theoretically turn 2, this turns into a 5/5 flyer probably on turn 3, be my guess. Like, you are obviously...
4 is probably more realistic, but at the same time, it has the bonus of always having flying, which Delver did not, right?
Right.
And the other thing is, when you top deck it, it is just a 5/5. It's a 2-mana 5/5 flyer. And Delver was not that. When you top deck Delver, it was always generally a pretty bad top deck.
Yes. So as has been the case so many times, I tried to put this new thing for Delver decks in a Delver deck, and it turned out to be better than Delver. So Delver got bumped. This has happened a number of times.
Yeah, I was going to say,
like that.
This, you say it like it's like kind of surprising, but it's just, no. It's just so normal. It's just the norm.
I just want him to be happy, Like,
I mean, look, man, Delver's a blue card. I've got a warm space in my heart for it, but it's like...
Sure.
I forgot my Delvers one time and showed up to Modern, and I was like, can I just put, 2 pencils in my deck? And then, maybe when I draw the pencil, I'll actually, keep my life total. It's going to do something, where Delver never did, so...
yeah. So this guy, I think, is, like I said, more of a Gurmag Angler kind of speed, but on any other turn than exactly turn 2 off of a blind flip on turn 1, this is going to be better. So I'm all in. I'm very excited about this card. Mine are already winging their way, flying, flapping his little salamander wings to me as we speak for delivery on the 25th.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Terramander is going to be a pretty good card. Although I am less high on the card than a lot of people. But I do think it's good. I just don't think it's I don't think it's broken. I think it's just a good card.
No, I mean, I think it, in the same way as Gurmag Angler, if you want to make a deck that's the turn 2 Gurmag Angler deck.
Well, Gurmag Angler was arguably the best creature in Modern. I think Terramander is worse than Gurmag Angler. by a decent margin. But that's a pretty high bar because Graveangler was arguably the best creature in Modern for a while. So,
sure.
I don't know. I think the card's good. I don't have any issue to put it on the list. I think it's fine.
Yep. All right. What do you got?
My number one is going to be Prime Speaker Vanifar.
Sure.
Hey, Aaron, have you looked at the Modern ban list recently? I know you just talked about KCI.
I have.
Did you see any other 4-mana artifacts there while you were looking?
I did. It's the darndest thing. The birthing pod.
There you go. Joke's on you because that one was only 3 mana. But you're right. It is. It is birthing pod, and that is exactly what Prime Speaker Vanifar is. Although this one is a birthing pod with an actual body instead of a artificial pod, if you will.
And a weird body, though.
A weird body, I agree. But one that survives lightning bolt, which is an important body in Modern.
Yeah. She's an ooze jellyfish wizard or something like that.
No jellyfish, but let me read the card for you. So Prime Speaker Vanifar is 2 colorless, a green and a blue, so Simic and 2. For a legendary creature, Alpha Ooze Wizard, that says...
Oh, there we go.
Tap, sacrifice another creature, search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. And Prime Speaker Vanifar is a 2/4. So immediately, what you're going to notice about the Prime Speaker is that she does not have haste. So, the first turn you play her, she's just a 2/4, which not great in Modern. There are not a lot of 4-mana 2/4s in this format, believe it or not. That said, Birthing Pod got banned. It was really good. And Birthing Pod cost mana to activate, and this card does not, which is bonkers. It's pretty ridiculous that this card costs 0 mana to activate. And in fact, people have already been going through, the Modern card pool, and there's already multiple chains that work where if you, have Prime Speaker Vanifar on the battlefield and you have any other creature and you built your deck right, they lose the game that turn. So, if you are able to activate Prime Speaker Vanifar in Modern, barring some unforeseen chain of circumstances like, having one of the tutor pieces in your hand or having been surgically extracted already or something, the card just wins the game by tapping. It's literally a 4-mana 2/4 that says, tap, sacrifice a creature, win the game. And there's more to it than that, but that is a really powerful creature. So, obviously you have to build around it, but, the Modern card pool has a lot of ways to do that. There's, Court of Calling to bring it out end step after your opponent tapped out, and boom, untap, I win. There are, cards like Lightning Greaves that work surprisingly well with Prime Speaker. Oh, no, wait.
No,
Lightning Greaves don't work at all. Never mind. But there are ways to give haste. You can,
there's a 100 ways.
There are ways to give haste. You have, Hall of the Bandit Lord and...
okay, hold on. Time out. If Hall of the Bandit Lord is, the 15th thing, and that I'm relishing this very small role reversal where you're, starting at the bottom. You're like, how deep can we go? There are plenty of cards. There's one Generator Servant. There you go. Boom.
Okay, Generator Servant does work.
Correct. Also, if you do not already own Scrib Rangers and you feel like playing this deck, probably worth grabbing them. Most of the lists, I think, are going to be running at least 2. I've seen some lists run 4. Because it's an easy mode win, so you can chain off with Vanifar and a single Bird of Paradise. You untap with both of them, and neither one of them is summoning sick. You sack the bird, you go get a Scrib Ranger, you return a forest to your hand, untap Vanifar, tap sack the Scrib Ranger, go get Breaching Hippocamp.
No, you missed one. You sack the Scrib Ranger. You go get Renegade Rallier. Renegade Rallier brings back Scrib Ranger. You untap Vanifar. You sack Renegade Rallier. You get Restoration Angel. Blink. I don't know. One of them. Untap Vanifar. You blink the Scrib Ranger. Untap Vanifar. Sacrifice the Scrib Ranger. Go get Deceiver Exarch. Untap Vanifar. Sacrifice Restoration Angel. Go get Kiki Jiki. Boom.
There you go.
Got him.
Yeah, boom. I love that. Like,
I mean, the trick
this
here
was like
is
one of the
the trick here is you're playing a straight up Bant deck with Kiki Jiki in it, which is not good, as they say. Usually, Bant isn't super interested in splashing a triple red card, but
that's fine.
Yeah, you'll find a way. I mean, it's powerful enough. Modern has an absurdly large pool of lands to choose from, and some of them are perfect for this. This feat, such as Firelit Thicket and Cascade Bluffs, they'll help out. You'll figure it out.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it's if you want it, you can have it. I mean, it's fine. Don't worry about the mana. The card is,
We'll worry about the mana, but for our purposes right now, Prime Speaker Vanifar, it's gonna be good. It's a modern card.
Yep. I think this is a happy medium in the sense that it is, because the hassle with Pod was you couldn't just hold up Terminate, and you can very easily do that with Prime Speaker, right?
What do you mean?
They go, here's my Vanifar, and you go Terminate.
Oh.
You're oh.
Yeah. You mean your creature removal spell is good against the creature deck? Yeah, it still will be. That's gonna be fair. That was all. That You're right. That was always a really annoying part about Pod. You're I have all these creature removal spells. None of that matters.
Right, exactly.
Lose. Oh, perfect.
This. I am going off. Please have a seat.
Yep. All right. What do you got for number 2, Aaron?
Hero of Precinct 1. I made a bold statement that I will stand behind, which is that this card is better than Young Pyromancer.
Okay, I think that's a little too bold. I think you've overstepped yourself, but continue.
One and a white, 2/2, human and warrior, 2 relevant creature types.
I like warriors better than humans.
Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a 1/1 white human creature token.
But the tokens aren't warriors?
The tokens are humans.
God.
People, somebody tried to come at me and they were like, oh, this the deck building restriction for this is way worse than Young Pyromancer because you'd be a blah, blah, blah. And I was like, first of all, the deck building restriction is a multicolored spell, not instant or sorcery.
The deck building restriction is way worse than Young Pyromancer. I agree with that person.
I don't, because there's plenty of enablers for this that are cards that you would play anyways.
So I agree with you, but the question is, when you try, when you're making a 1/1, making a 1/1/1 isn't what you're trying to do. You're trying to make a lot of 1/1s, right?
But you're not just making a 1/1. You're making a human.
I mean, I agree. I agree with you, but I'm just saying, comparing it to Young Pyromancer, if you're trying to make 1/1s, you're trying to make a lot of 1/1s. So, the idea is, however you enable it, you want that enabling to be cheap. And for gold cards, most of the good gold cards you play cost 2 mana or more. Whereas, most of the cards that trigger Young Pyromancer are going to cost, they cost any amount of mana. But there's a lot of them that cost 1. And in fact, that's how Young Pyromancer decks play, are, a lot of things that cost 1.
Sure.
So that is a real thing in that sense.
So this also means that Hero of Precinct 1 is better against Chalice of the Void. So you just proved my point, is what I'm saying.
I don't know that I agree with that, but keep going.
So I had to I was exasperated because I was Thalia's Lieutenant is a card that exists.
Well, there you go.
That you would already play.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that Thalia's Lieutenant is busted.
Right, Thalia's Lieutenant is insane in a deck where you still have to hard cast most of your creatures.
Thalia's Lieutenant is so good. The deck that plays it plays Phantasmal Image just for the ETB trigger on it. Not even the second half. And the second half is still good in a lot of matchups. It's one of the better parts of the cards in a lot of matchups.
Right. So if you are looking for the sort of something that I mentioned on the, I think I talked about it in the Discord, but it was there's a point at which, and this point has probably already passed, where humans sort of splits into at least a sort of like aggro, like super aggro, and then a more controlling, build. And this is towards that aggro build, because you get to play spells, which is great. You don't have to worry about like the dorky mana base. And, like if you want to just play Path to Exile or Terminate or like 100 other very Kolaghan's Command, right? Like this with Kolaghan's Command and Thalia's Lieutenant, like don't have a Path to Exile. Too bad. They're just going to keep coming back.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is, this is a very powerful card for sure. I will say, though, that your point with, like, Thalia's Lieutenant, I think brings a lot of people to think, oh, this just slots right into Modern Humans, right? And I don't actually think it slots right into that deck, mostly because that is an Aether Vial deck, so it does a lot of not casting its spells.
Right.
And
sure.
There's also not as many gold cards in that deck as this card would want you to play. That said, its synergy with Thalia's Lieutenant is undeniable. It's very powerful. So I think there's certainly a way you could build humans that would incorporate this card. So, I'm sure there's going to have to be some testing done, and I think we'll come to, at some point, humans is just, the card pool is so deep for humans, there's just going to be two different humans decks. Like, it's going to happen. There's going to be, like, aggro humans and, like, mid-range humans. Like, that's coming at some point in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I put together a blue-white humans deck that I feel is probably pretty close to what I would play, just immediately, and it is very good. But it includes other cards that are on this list later, so I want to come back to it. It's just blue-white. It's blue-white humans. I want to come back to it, but after we talk about all these cards, because there are other cards that are in this deck that are on this list.
Sure, okay. So, my number 2 card might go in this Blue-Eyed Humans deck, even though it's not a human, but it is the Deputy of Detention.
Yes, spoiler alert, he is also in that deck.
Yeah.
Because even though he is not a human,
this card's good.
He's great.
Yeah, I have this as my second best modern card in the set, although, again, I wouldn't be shocked if one of these later ones ends up being better, but for me, I think this card's quite good. So for those that don't know, Deputy of Detention is 1 colorless, a white and a blue, so 3 mana for a Vidalcan Wizard. You'll notice not human, but Wizard's still a relevant creature type in Modern at this point. He is a 1/3 with the only ability being when Deputy of Detention enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls, and all other non-land permanents that player controls with the same name as that permanent until Deputy of Detention leaves the battlefield. So, essentially, it's Detention Sphere on a 1/3 body. And why is this good? Well, Collected Company is one of the best cards in Modern. Aether Vial is a card in Modern. Detention Sphere is a card people play in Modern, despite it not being very good. But I promise you, Detention Sphere with Flash would be played a lot in Modern. That card would be very good. And while Deputy Detention doesn't have Flash, there are a lot of ways to give it Flash that are commonly played. And there are a lot of decks that are looking for this effect because they don't have very many duplications of it. To the point where, like, Humans plays a bunch of Reflector Mages, even though Reflector Mage is horrible in a lot of matchups. So, maybe you're right. Blue-White is the place that deck is going, and it's going to be like a Deputy Detention and Reflector Mage deck. We don't know.
Yes.
We'll see how that shakes out. But for now, the exile target permanent and all the permanents with the same name is a really powerful effect. It just is a lot better than it looks. I guess having played with the Detention Sphere a lot, it's just solves a lot of weird corner case scenarios where it's oh my god, my opponent just emptied the Warrens for 18. There's 40 goblins. What am I going to do? It's, oh, deputy detention. Boom. Answer that whole problem, right? Someone's got, they've got 2 rest in pieces in play in your graveyard deck. Well, it's like, I'll just detention sphere both of them. Boom, 1 card, 2 answers. And obviously, I don't know why deputy detention is in a deck that's getting rid of rest in peace, but point remains, it's just like it comes up where it's just better than it looks, and I think this card's going to surprise a lot of people. Also, Wizards is like the type of deck that's kind of coming out of nowhere to be good recently, and this could be really powerful in there.
Yeah, like there is already the Wizards deck sort of fell off the map when Humans was just like so much better. But like the Wizards shell is definitely there. So I would not be surprised to see somebody pick up like Jeskai Wizards like this, Adelies, Storm Chaser Mage, like that, like Soulscar Mage, that whole thing. Silly.
Yep.
Oh, and the bird, Nimble Obstructionist.
Well, that's the card I would think Deputy would replace at some point, but we'll see.
Who knows? Somebody go out and make that deck, or maybe I'll make it. I don't know. My goal is to have 25 new brews that use cards from this block by the end of the week, and I'm up to 15 so far. So I'm on track. I'll write down Jeskai Wizards because it's probably worth exploring. Speaking of almost wizards, my next one is a shaman. Shaman. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's a cleric. Okay, I guess that makes sense.
Okay.
It's the word priest in the title. So Priest of the Forgotten Gods, 1 and a black, human cleric. So 1/2 has the following weird ability. Sacrifice 2 other creatures. Any number of target players each lose 2 life and sacrifice a creature. You add black and draw a card.
It's a lot of text.
It's a lot of text. It is a ton of text. So you get a like half a smallpox, less than half a smallpox, like that sort of effect. So you get an edict, a shock, 2 mana, and a card. And all you have to do is sack 2 other creatures. And originally I looked at this card and I was like, I want to love this card because it does so much that I really love. So I immediately thought of this with Bloodghast, as I often do, and it is great with Bloodghast. The card that it is really great with is another card that I love, and it's such a pet card of mine, which is Nether Trader. And Nether Trader...
Is Nether Trader modern legal?
It is. So Nether Trader is the time spiral.
Oh, there you go. Time spiral strikes again.
Fixed. Yeah, time spiral. Yeah, you can't get away from it, especially not on this podcast. It's the fixed time spiral Nether Spirit. So it's a 2 mana 1/1 with haste and shadow. So it's in modern, it's functionally unblockable because creatures of shadow can only be blocked by other creatures of shadow, of which there are 0, like that nobody plays any.
Wait, there's a really popular shadow in this format.
It's different kind.
Okay.
The word shadow is in the wrong place on the card.
Got it. Okay.
So the recursion part of Nether Trader is whenever another creature dies, you can pay a single black, and if you do, you return Nether Trader to the battlefield. So what happens is you have Priests of the Forgotten Gods, you got 2 Nether Traders, you sack the 2 Nether Traders, you get 2 black mana, both of the Nether Trader, the Nether Trader triggers see each other, you get 2 black, so they come back, and then you still draw a card, get an edict, and shock your opponent. And they have haste, and they're just like unblockable 1/1s, and I've tried to put them in so many shells. Oh my god. You have no idea. Bad Moon, like swords. I want them to find a home. And they're great. But I think this is actually it, because it just lines up perfectly. So, Priest of the Forgotten Gods, boom. Nether Trader. Nether Trader got very expensive, and I don't know why. It's like $9 now. It was bulk for since it was printed.
Well, maybe people see it with Priest of the Forgotten Gods.
Look, I like to think that I am the only person who comes up with these ideas.
Maybe.
Even though that's obviously not the case, but...
Okay.
All right, go.
My number 3 is Incubation Druid. Incubation Druid is a 2-mana 0/2, colorless and a green, for an elf druid, so creature elf.
So much text.
And it has tap, add 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. If Incubation Druid has a +1/+1 counter on it, instead add 3 mana of that type instead. So that's busted. In decks with lands that can make 5 colors, this is a Gilded Lotus, so you can put a +1/+1 counter on it. It is in the same colors as a card in Modern called Llanowar Reborn, I believe.
Yep, that's a card.
Yep, which is a tapped land that taps for green, enters the battlefield tapped, and has Graft 1. So, it enters with a counter, and then when a creature enters the battlefield, you may choose to move that counter onto that creature. So, if you go turn 1 Llanowar Reborn, turn 2 Incubation Druid off of that green source. Next turn, if you play a land, you have 6 mana on turn 3, just right there. I don't think... We had this discussion with this card. I don't think that's enough by itself, to make this into a deck. The good news is the only thing it's asking is you to put a +1/+1 counter on it, which is not hard to do in this format. In Modern, there are so many ways to do that. Nissa Vital Force, or not Vital Force, Nissa, the one from Zendikar, the 3 mana one, can do it. Yep. There's a ton of ways. I don't know. There's 1,000 ways in Modern. You can come up with a way. And a 2-mana creature that taps for 3 mana is broken. So, I think the payoff's there. We'll see what ends up happening. But, this card is super powerful. I would not be shocked if it ends up being the most expensive card in the set in a year's time.
I could say that. So my next one is pretty straightforward. Ministrant of Obligation is just a creature version of Lingering Souls.
Yes, it's a 3-mana 2/1 with Afterlife 2.
So you pay 3 mana for 2 power up front, and then when it dies, you get 2 spirits. The big thing there, the reason that I put it on here, because it is the creature version of a spell that already sees a lot of play. There are plenty of decks that want tokens that don't want Lingering Souls. Weird as that sounds. So you could include this in a humans deck, a deck that has mana restrictions or something like that.
It is type human.
Towards creatures.
It is type human, so
it is also type human. But there are a lot of aristocrat enablers.
Look,
this is certainly
Ahren. I'm happy you put this on your list because you know what deck really wanted this effect.
Oh boy,
you know what's coming. It's Esper Rally Ancestors. You needed a good creature to sacrifice in that deck, and boy, did we find one.
You sure did. Oh boy. So yeah, but that's all there is to it. It's just it's just another, or like, hey, maybe you want 8 Lingering Souls. There's decks that want that too. So I think this is just going to be a good role player in a lot of sort of mid-range white decks, or mid-range Lingering Souls decks.
Sure.
And just another flavor.
Seriously, this card's really good in Esper Rally Ancestors.
No, I understand that, but it's also like it's
No,
good
I
with.
know.
I'll think about it in like Collected Company.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't put Lingering Souls in a Collected Company deck, but like this in a Collected Company like Abzan deck would be great.
Yeah, it'd be actually good. I agree.
Yep.
All right, next card. We have Electro Dominance, which is a red X instant that says Electro Dominance deals X damage to any target. You may cast a card with converted mana cost X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Now, why is this important? Well, there's already decks in the format, namely Living End, that play a bunch of 0 mana spells that you cannot cast. And they still play these cards because they're so good they're worth 2 for 1 of yourself to cast them. And as it just so happens, Living End, it has historically been a very good deck in Modern. Unfortunately, it's always suffered from this everything has to cost 3 because it's a Cascade combo deck issue. And we did an episode, I don't remember how long ago now, but probably about a year at this point, about, it was like the blue Living End where we came up with, I think it was like Esper Living End or blue black maybe.
Black.
Yeah. Where you were just using As Foretold to cast Living End. And the bonus here is that it let you play with, spells that cost less than 3. Well, so why is Electro Dominance good in that deck? Well, it lets you cast these cards for just 2 mana. So it gives you another enabler, which was kind of the problem with As Foretold, was like it was so important to have As Foretold because your deck just didn't really work without it. And like you had enough cyclers that you saw As Foretold a reasonable amount of the time, but it wasn't quite enough. Well, now we have more ways to abuse As Foretold, or abuse like the As Foretold, Ancestral Vision, Living End package. But Electro Dominance is red, so it like takes you this blue-red shell. And as it just so happens, Wheel of Fortune is really, really good in Living End because you discard your whole hand, which is probably full of creatures that you would like to reanimate, and then draw a new hand that is hopefully going to help you find your combo pieces. And as it just so happens, the red card in the Ancestral Vision Living End cycle from, I don't remember what set that was, Future Sight? Maybe Time Spiral? I think it was Time Spiral.
It was Future Sight.
No, it was Time Spiral.
It was Time Spiral.
Yeah.
Yep, sorry.
The red card was Wheel of Fate, I think, which is just a Wheel of Fortune with Suspend 4, I believe. But when we're not suspending it, you can just cast it for 2 mana. The Electro Dominance being card disadvantage thing doesn't matter because you're discarding your hand and drawing 7 new cards anyway. And it's just a really good enabler for that deck. So I would not be shocked if just immediately we have, Electro Dominance, As Foretold, Wheel of Fate, Living End, Ancestral Vision deck that just can aggregate resources super quickly. Can find ways to, to beat the hate with bounce spells and whatnot, and just Electro Dominance is an instant, which is also really important because As Foretold kind of got rid of the. I forgot I think it's Violent Outburst. It's the instant speed one from Living End. It got rid of the instant speed Wrath that was always really powerful out of Living End. It was one of the reasons Living End was so dominant against creature decks. And Electro Dominance brings that back to the deck. But now it's only 2 mana. So, in a format where you can play Simian Spirit Guide and now actually reanimate them by discarding them with Wheel of Fate, this can come out of nowhere. Like, you can literally just have no mana untapped. Boom, exile 2 Spirit Guides, Electro Dominance in your end step, cast a Wheel of Fate, draw 7 cards, untap, go off. Like, that's a real thing now. So I think this deck's going to be scary. The shell that I actually put this in was, the quick deck that I built with it was a Phoenix shell. And it was basically Electro Dominance, Wheel of Fate, Living End, Hollow One, Phoenix. Oh, Hollow One with Wheel of Fate is gross. I didn't even think of that. Jeez, okay. Yeah, that's a real thing.
So it was basically like Electro Dominance for like Wheel of Fate, and then like if you end up discarding, a bunch of hollow ones, you just like Living End,
Sure.
and all your hollow ones come back. So like it doesn't matter if you discard them. But if you have none in your hand and you Wheel of Fate, the chances of you drawing multiples on a draw 7 after, turn 3 where you've already drawn 9 cards, like it's gross.
Yeah, it's actually those odds are pretty good.
And also it counts, you cast the spell, so it also counts for Phoenix. So if you do this, Wheel of Fate, Gut Shot, that's your 3 spells.
Yeah, I mean, that's real. I mean, even just like Serum Visions, like, yeah, this is real. This is something that's going to be explored. This is really broken with the Time Spiral 5, if you will. Although it's only 4 now because the green one doesn't exist in Modern anymore.
We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about that one. All right, what's your number 5?
So my number 5 is probably going to be like strictly a sideboard card, but I think it's a really important card.
No, that's actually a valid. No, that's like a very valid point you just made, because like if we were doing this for the last Ravnica set and we didn't include Rest in Peace, we would have been doing our entire listener base a disservice. So
yeah. So Cinder Vines is red-green for an enchantment, and it says whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Cinder Vines deals 1 damage to that player, and you can pay 1 and sacrifice it to destroy target artifact or enchantment. Cinder Vines deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. So it's like a combo Seal of Primordium / Destructive Revelry with a something that pings you for 1 when you cast a non-creature spell.
Kind of like an Eidolon of the Great Revel Pyrostatic Pillar type thing. It's not quite the same thing, but yeah.
So that's that. But in the sideboard of Burn, or even like fair like Naya decks,
Naya Zoo maybe.
Like red-green aggro decks. Dude, I made an insane Naya Zoo deck. Or no, it's just red-green. The Gruul stuff from this set is crazy. But just those decks where you're going to come up against like spells decks and they're going to stomp all over you because like you're just playing creatures. Having this to just sort of like get in that chip damage and punish them for trying to make their game plan happen is insane. Just like utility, like this card does so much for so little mana. I'm very excited to have this one in the toolbox.
Sure. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's good. It's pretty straightforward. It's good against spells decks and it's good against artifacts and enchantments, but those are things that exist in Modern for sure.
Yeah. Yep. That's it.
All right.
Moving on.
My number 5 is Lavinia, Azorius Renegade. I think this is one of the cards you were talking about earlier with Hero of Precinct 1, but...
Yes. Spoilers, this multicolored card also makes it into the Hero of Precinct 1 deck.
Shocker. Okay, but...
Yeah, shocker.
Lavinia is a 2-mana human soldier, 1 white, 1 blue, so Azorius, human soldier, for a 2/2 legendary creature that says each opponent can't cast non-creature spells with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands that player controls. So, if this thing's in play, no Karn on turn 3, Tron guy. No Past in Flames or Gifts Ungiven on turn 3 out of Storm. A lot of ways to abuse, people casting big stuff, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, mana cheats are one of the primary ways that decks in Modern function.
Yeah.
And this stops that.
Yep, and then she has another ability that says, whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. So, kind of like a Chalice of the Void for, basically made just to stop Electro Dominance. No, I'm kidding, but she is really good against that deck. Also very good against, anything that costs 0. Pax, Amulet Titan's going to have a hard time with this card. I'm sure there's other stuff that costs 0 in Modern. I think of Gut Shot, I guess. Pretty good against it. Living End, yeah. I mean, the whole Electro Dominance package, yeah. I mean, that was actually serious because that could be a real deck now. And then on top of that, she just has a lot of synergy with the card Spell Queller because the second time they cast it without spending mana, so it just makes them killing your Spell Queller irrelevant. They have to kill Lavinia and then kill Spell Queller, which just makes so many hoops to jump through when you're getting attacked by a bunch of creatures. So, the other thing too, really good against Terminus, which small creature decks usually want to be good against. She does a lot of things. She's a human. I can see her seeing sideboard play. I don't think she's great in Modern. There are just very specific places where she's very powerful. So I can see her being like a good sideboard card for the humans deck, which is a deck that has historically not had great sideboard cards. They kind of are digging for sideboard cards. So I can see metagames where she's just great there. So we'll see where that goes, but I think she's pretty good.
So my next one is Judith. Is it the
Judith the Scourge Diva? Would you like me to read it for you?
I will pull it up right here. Kablam. Judith the Scourge Diva. 1 black, red, legendary creature, human, shaman. Oh, she's the shaman that I was thinking of. Other creatures you control get +1/+0. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, Judith the Scourge Diva deals 1 damage to any target. She's a 2/2. Aristocrats, one of my favorite archetypes. Martyr Aristocrats, I have a particular soft spot for. The power boost is a super real thing. The difference between 1/1 beats and 2/1 beats is very, very significant, by approximately a factor of 100%. And, that's real clock turns, with just a very simple effect. That's, kind of just a freebie.
Yeah, I mean, Aristocrats has historically been a very mediocre beatdown deck with more of a combo finish, right? And she makes the very mediocre beatdown just mediocre.
Yep. Yeah, so she makes it extra medium and then also gives you another sack trigger, basically. So we can now reasonably go up to 12 of these if we want in a deck. And obviously there's plenty of sack outlets that are already existing. I have a number of Aristocrats decks already made. So worry not, noble listener. I have not forgotten about the Aristocrats. Take it away. There's you.
Okay. My number 6 card is Rixmati Reveler. Rixmati Reveler is a 1 and a red for a 2/2 human shaman with Spectacle, which says there's Spectacle for 2 black red. Says you may cast this card for its Spectacle cost if an opponent lost life this turn. And then it says when Rixmati Reveler enters the battlefield, discard a card, then draw a card. So rummage. And then it says if Rixmati's Spectacle cost was paid, instead discard your hand, then draw 3 cards. So the rummage isn't great, although Modern is a place where it's very abusable, so it could be great. In this Electro Dominance deck, for instance, or like we were talking about earlier, where you have Surgical Extraction in your hand because you made a metagame call and you're playing against a deck where Surgical Extraction is horrible and you want to get it out of your hand and draw a card. Well, Rixmati Reveler does that. And it does that on a fine body, although unexciting for Modern. You don't usually want to play Grizzly Bears in Modern, but that's fine. But the upside of a 4-mana 2/2 that discards your hand and draws 3 cards is really powerful. We've already seen this with Bedlam Reveler, as just this like chain of, once you start like casting one Bedlam Reveler, it's really easy to just start chaining them together, and you just like, cast a Bedlam Reveler, draw 3 cards, use all those spells, cast another Bedlam Reveler, just draw 3 more cards. You just start like chaining ancestrals essentially, and part of like the problem with that is you only have 4 Bedlam Revelers, so you run out of this chain eventually. Well, Rix My Reveler solves that, and it's kind of perfect for that style of deck. So I would not be shocked to see this card see a lot of modern play.
So my next one is sort of along the same lines. I as I often do, cheated on this one and kind of like picked 2 that are related. So the 2 for this are Skewer the Critics and Light Up the Stage. Skewer the Critics is basically like different, mostly better Rift Bolt. It's a 3 mana sorcery speed bolt, but it has Spectacle for single red, so you can turn it into a sorcery speed lightning bolt. You can turn it into a Rift Bolt.
It's a chain lightning if your opponent lost life this turn.
There you go. That's sometimes we got to stretch for these plays likes, but the bottom line is it's almost always just going to be a lightning bolt, and it immediately goes into burn. The card is just bananas good. Light Up the Stage is a card that I was not initially convinced about. It's also 3 mana, and it says exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. So notably, it's play, not cast. So you can play lands off of it, which is great. It has also a Spectacle for single red. I looked at it and I was like, do I want Divination in red? And I was like, I really don't. And then I was like, do I want Thoughtcast in red? And I was like, yeah, I guess I kind of do.
There's not a deck ever that didn't want Thoughtcast for 1 mana. That's a busted card, man.
Sure. So then the way that it plays is similar to that compounding Bedlam Reveler effect. Let's say you chain 2 of them together, and if you have an empty hand, you're just like, oh, like here's 4 cards that I can just do whatever I want with. Also, like if you don't use them, they stay exiled, but if you do use them, they go to your graveyard. They don't get exiled from there, so you can like have your whatever risk factor and then still be able to jumpstart it later.
Look, man, Light of the Stage is like broken. Like, you had this on your list, so I didn't put it on mine, but I actually think this is the best modern card in the entire set. This card is messed up. It's really, really, really good in Blue-Red Phoenix, which didn't really need other cards to be awesome for it. It was already very good, but it's really good there. It's really good in Burn. It's really good in any Bedlam Reveler deck. 1 mana draw 2s are not reasonable at all.
It felt like I remember, for some reason I have this from back when Treasure Cruise first came out. There was a video on Star City, and it was BBD versus CVM, and they were playing. Chris Van Meter was playing like one of the very early builds of Cruise Burn with Young Pyromancer and Treasure Cruise, and for some reason, one of the things he said always stuck with me, which was, he's like, when I cast Treasure Cruise, all I want to do is cast another Treasure Cruise. And Light Up the Stage feels the same way. It's like, when I cast Light Up the Stage, the only I just want to hit another Light Up the Stage and just like keep going. There's I'll come back to, there's a interesting thing that happens in some of the Rakdos cards that has a weird implications, but I will get into those at the end. So fire when ready.
Okay,
go on to your number 6. 7?
I believe it's 7, yeah. My number 7 is Font of Agonies.
Oh, I love this card.
Font of Agonies is 1 black for an enchantment. It says whenever you pay life, put that many blood counters on Font of Agonies, and then you may pay 1 and a black to remove 4 blood counters from Font of Agonies. And then it says destroy target creature. Okay, so Font of Agonies, by no means is this card broken. We're talking about a lot of cards that could actually be broken, like Light Up the Stage and Prime Speaker Vanifar and Electro Dominance, right? Like all these cards that look incredibly powerful. But what Font of Agonies does do is it is repeatable. It's a repeatable kill spell for 1 mana with cards that ask you to pay life, which, believe it or not, there's a deck in this format that's really good at paying life, and that is Death Shadow, because you have to power up your Death Shadow. And Death Shadow already had this kind of weird situation going on where, if you paid a lot of life because that's what all the cards you're playing tell you to do, and you don't draw your Death Shadow, well, then they were actually bad. But the other thing that Font of Agonies has going for it is that all the Shocklands people play in Modern make you pay life for them to enter untapped. So it's just like between Street Wraith and Dismember making you pay life, and Shocklands and Fetchlands, it's really easy to turn this into just like repeatable Doomblades on 1 card. Now, obviously, like you only have 20 life, so like you can't get that many out of it, maybe 2 or 3, but like killing, two creatures of any size even for 1 card, and it's instant speed. Like you can do this at instant speed. Like the counters just go on and then you can do it whenever. So it's like, having a way to kill 2 Mantis Riders out of Death Shadow is huge. And it's something that the deck has been missing, so I could see this being a player in Modern. Not archetype defining by any means, but definitely a player.
Yeah, I mean it's something that you can play early. It accrues incidental value, and incidental value in any kind of mid-range strategy is something that you are at least passingly interested in. Decks that play Dismember, you basically your Dismember also gets you a free Doomblade. Yep.
Well, yeah, and then I mean, the other thing I want to like stress about it though is that I don't think it's good in decks that aren't already paying life for Shadow. Like I think we've talked about this before. You need 8 of an effect before it's good, and Shadow kind of cheats on that with like cantrips, and some of them play Traverse the Ulvenwald to get more shadows, that type of situation. But the fact that Font of Agonies just plays off the same mechanics Shadow is playing off of makes it good, I think.
Yes. Yep. Agreed. I'm very fond of this card. All right. My next card is Kaya Orzhov Usurper. I have a lot of feelings about this card.
I hope they're mostly negative, because this card is bad.
They are conflicted, because it is not the card that I wanted deep down in my heart of hearts, because what I wanted was Kaya Ghost Assassin.
And what you got was like a dumpster that put on a Kaya mask?
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far.
I mean, I went that far, and I'm staying here.
Okay, sure. Specifically in black-white Super Friends mid-rangey kind of control deck. It's mid-range control, I guess. She's 3 mana. She comes in with 3 loyalty. Her +1 is exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. You gain 2 life if at least 1 creature card was exiled this way. So like incidental graveyard hate and life gain. Her -1 is isolate. It's exile target non-land permanent with a converted mana cost 1 or less. And her ultimate -5 is Kaya Orzhov Usurper deals damage to target player equal to the number of cards that player owns in exile, and you gain that much life. So once again, her ultimate wins the game if that is the kind of thing that you are already doing. So like if you're playing Rest in Peace, or probably Leyline of the Void, like Leyline of the Void, Nile Spellbomb, like cards you would already kind of play, she rewards you for doing that. Like, do I think this is a slam dunk 4 of in a tier 1 deck? No, absolutely not. Am I going to play this in like a 2 of in the 75 of, black white smallpox or like black white tokens? Yeah, probably.
Well, see, okay. So that's what I was going to say to you is this card, despite our talk on main deck graveyard hate earlier and the fact that this does that, this card is horrible. It's not good at what it does. Is the issue to me. So it's like you can't really justify main decking it. But your point of like 2 of in the 75, I don't actually disagree with that because this is as a sideboard card. This card actually has interesting applications because it is the first like sideboard planeswalker we've ever seen, and planeswalkers are an inherently powerful archetype. Or just like class of card, I guess.
Liliana of the Last Hope is primarily a sideboard planeswalker.
Yeah, but like there have definitely been Jund decks that plays Lily Last Hope in the main, and like I know what you mean that she is like against X1 creatures, and I can kind of see Kaya being like that, but she's so strange. Like none of her like obviously you want her against graveyard decks, but like she's not that good against graveyard decks, but like she's not bad either. So I'm going to be very interested to see how good she ends up being because the fact that like her plus isn't like that effective, like it's fine, but at the same time, it's mostly worse than like, like Rest in Peace or Now Spellbound would be for like when you really want graveyard hate. But you're right, her -5 can also just win the game in some scenarios. So it'll be interesting to see how good she is. Definitely curious.
Yeah, she synergizes with other sideboard pieces too, and in a world where those sideboard pieces become main deckable, she also becomes main deckable.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I don't know. We'll see when that happens, but I don't hate her. Okay.
Well, you kind of do.
Well, I do hate her, but I don't hate her in the sideboard.
Like
I do hate her as a main deck card.
Okay,
but
sure.
I do not hate her in the sideboard. Okay. My number 8 is Bedevil, which is black, red for Hero's Downfall, but it can also kill an artifact. So
I was very surprised to see this card on your list.
Look, I don't think right now is the time for it, but killing that many permanent types is good, and there are decks that already were playing Hero's Downfall. I think it was mostly just like blue-black fairies I've seen it in, and like mostly blue-black decks. But Grixis played Kolaghan's Command because the artifact mode was so relevant. Like, you weren't really playing it for the 2 damage, although there are definitely spots where the 2 damage was good, but it was mostly for like destroy an artifact, discard, and return a creature. And sometimes shock, but usually when you use the shock mode, it wasn't great. And the fact that this kills a planeswalker, a creature, or an artifact just like makes it versatile enough that it, could easily be an inclusion in a lot of black-red type of decks. Where it's like, I could see Hollow One playing like one of these is like a way to kill Nihil Spellbombs or a way to kill Grafdigger's Cage, that type of thing. That also can just, kill a Primeval Titan at instant speed. So, I think it's versatile enough in decks that can't already play Assassin's Trophy. So, nothing super interesting about it, but I think it's modern power level removal, I guess.
All right. I could get behind that. My next one is Rhythm of the Wild. So back in my day, a long time ago, there was a card called Fires of Yavimaya. It was a very good card. It was a tier 1 deck at the time, and it was one red green for an enchantment. Like creatures you control have haste, and then I think you could blow it up to blow up an enchantment or something like that. Fires. Oh, that's what it was. So Fires of Yavimaya is from Plane Chase. Yikes, that was a long time ago. One red green, creatures you control have haste, and you can sack it to give a creature +2/+2. Rhythm of the Wild is one red green, creature spells you control can't be countered, which is just like a literal freebie on this card. And then non-token creatures you control have Riot. So Riot is They either enter the battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1 counter or haste. This card is in aggressive creature decks, counters matter decks, creature decks that don't want their creatures to get countered but don't want to play Cavern Souls. Like, this is nutty just on its own. Like the that fervor type effect where everything has haste.
It's also really good with persist, for the record.
Also exceptional with persist. Yeah, let's not forget. Other notable thing about this card is each instance of Riot triggers separately. So if you have multiple of these, you can Riot once and then again. So that's
basically your creature's going to get haste at +1/+1 or +2/+2.
Yep, or double haste. Double haste isn't a thing. I mean, it is a thing. It's a legal game action to give your creature haste twice, but it is pointless. So I think in I'm probably the first place I'm going to try this is Zoo. The second place I'm going to try this is Goblins, because Goblins definitely wants a fervor effect, and like I said, the counter is good. The counter's good. The can't be countered is great. So I'm a big fan of this card.
Okay, my number 9 is the Biomancer's Familiar. It is a blue and a green for a creature mutant that is a 2/2, and it says activated abilities of creatures you control cost 2 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the amount of mana and ability cost to activate to less than 1 mana. Then it also says the next time a creature adapts this turn, it adapts as though it had no +1/+1 counter on it. So for our purposes, we can ignore the adapt text, although I guess that could come up in Modern, although it is unlikely. But mostly this is Training Grounds on a stick. Why does that matter? Because Training Grounds is actually a really powerful card. It has top-aided Modern GPs in the past, or maybe Modern SCGs. Not entirely sure, but I know it's top-aided events. And it's really powerful with a couple cards in Modern. The two most notable I could come up were Duskwatch Recruiter, which was a very big player in Devoted Druid decks, and Eldrazi Displacer, which is a deck or a card I've played a ton of and is very, very powerful. I mean, both of those have 3 mana activated abilities that, with Biomancer's Familiar in play, cost 1. And if you know anything about Storm, reducing the cost of repeated things you do throughout a turn and throughout a game is ridiculously powerful. And the fact that this is a green creature means you can hit it off Collected Company, which is very relevant for, cards like Eldrazi Displacer and Duskwatch Recruiter, which also like to get hit off Collected Company. So I don't have a full home for it yet. I don't know if that's the best home for it, if there's something better, but I do know that this effect is very powerful, and I would be shocked if at some point in the next 5 years someone didn't find a pretty powerful home for this card.
Yeah, I started, and I was able to get it somewhere. I got Blinks. Blinks happened. I got you could do a bunch of silly stuff with like Flicker Wisp. So like there's a lot of Bant Blink stuff. So like you're already in Bant with Eldrazi Displacer, so you're kind of like in Bant Eldrazi world, but also like Flicker. You really kind of need Flicker Wisp to make it busted. But we sort of got to all this stuff, and then it didn't win the game. It was just a lot of like petty annoyances. So I need to find a way to convert those sort of silly blinky things into I win the game.
How about Duskwatch Recruiter, where you just pay 1 mana to draw a creature?
Sure. I mean, it does. Yeah, like I said, I think there's there's more. There's like a level 2.
Yeah, there's something there. I mean, we don't have it yet, obviously, but
yeah, we don't.
There's something there,
but it's there. So my last one is Theater of Horrors. So Theater of Horrors is 1 black red for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. During your turn, if an opponent lost life this turn, you may play cards exiled with Theater of Horrors, and as an activated ability, 3 in a red, Theater of Horrors deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. This is a Phyrexian Arena type effect, which has certainly been playable at points in the past. This and Light Up the Stage, and I think there's 1 or 2 other Rakdos cards in this set, do a very interesting thing, which is they instead of using the graveyard as an extension of your hand, they use the exile zone as an extension of your hand. And that has some really unique benefits in a way that the graveyard doesn't. There are very few cards that interact with the exile zone specifically, and almost none of them see play.
Whoa. Some people play processors. Blue-black Eldrazi, like, won something recently. There was a deck that showed up recently.
Exactly, a processor or Pull from Eternity.
I mean, it's just the process. Like, the only card that interacts with this is, like, the black Eldrazi 3/2. It's like a 3-mana 3/2 that processes
Wasteland Strangler. Okay, sure. So the cards exist in a largely protected zone. And so what happens is you sort of build up this extra hand, and then you cast your Bedlam Reveler, and you dump everything that's in your hand, but you still have this extra hand hanging out in the exile zone that you have access to. And that is an interaction, or the Wheel of Fate, whatever, those hand dump, draw effects. You can just make those, draw an extra 2 cards, 3 cards, 4 cards, because the cards under Theater of Horrors don't go away. And so you can just, like I said, you just have them available. And that is a deceptively powerful, like, having, and like, those cards can't be Thoughtseized. Those cards can't be, whatever.
Yeah, they can only get Wasteland Strangler.
Right, they can only get Wasteland Strangler. So really, the big winner of Ravnica Allegiance is Wasteland Strangler. So you have a supplemental hand that is not subject to regularly played interaction, and that sort of once again, like a cruel resource accrue thing just happens. And it's before you Wasteland strangled my train of thought, it was this is also play not cast, so you can play lands with it as well.
Yep.
So and interesting from a game design perspective, big picture, using the exile zone in a different way, interesting, but also very powerful. So I'm in on this card. I like this card in those like Bedlam Revelry kind of decks.
Yep.
I would also maybe this makes Dark Deal playable. That would be really cool.
Probably not.
I like that card a lot. I know you just play Wheel of Fate, but it makes Wheel of Fate Burning Inquiry, like all those breaking the symmetry of a Burning Inquiry type effect, or like not breaking the symmetry, but lessening the impact on you is very strong.
Yeah, I mean, it's powerful. We'll see what happens with it, though. It is conditional with them having to lose life, although it's not super It's not too hard to do in Modern, but I don't know. We'll see.
If you're already in on playing cards like that, I think you probably could deal with having a gut shot.
Well, sure, but like the thing is just that it's not nothing, right? Like it is a condition to meet.
Sure. Yep. Yep. You're not wrong. It is not completely free.
Okay. So our last set here is my cheaty split pair because I couldn't decide between the two, and you'd already done one, so I think it's only fair.
Sure.
But I have chosen the split pair of mythic green creatures from the set between Ravager Worm and Hydroid Krasis. And the reason I chose to split them is because there's a very played card in this format called Summoner's Pact that lets you tutor for a green creature. And these are both semi new effects for green creatures to have. Hydroid Krasis is X blue-green for a Jellyfish Hydra Beast that says when you cast this spell, you gain X life, or you gain half X life and draw half X cards, round down each time. And then it has flying trample and it enters the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters on it. So if you cast it for blue-green 4, it's a 6-mana 4/4 flying trample creature that has a cast trigger of draw 2 and gain 2 life. That's a really powerful ability to have a cast trigger on. It's strange that it has a cast trigger, so that is the type of thing that you could, Summoner's Pact for and feel happy with, like late game. If you think they're going to counter your prime time, well, shoot, I'll just in Amulet Titan or whatever, I'm just going to draw 6 cards or something, and I'm going to find a prime time that way. It'll be fine. So, it's a powerful thing to have in your deck. It's not the end of the world to cast it a little earlier for, 2 and just draw a card or whatever. So, I think that's interesting. And then Ravager Worm, there's not a lot of, like just murderous red caps or shriek maws you can tutor for with Summoner's Pact. I think there's a few I'm probably missing, but Ravager Worm's a pretty good one. It's a 3 red, green, so 6 mana for a 4/5 Riot. And I mean, you went over Riot earlier, but essentially it's either a 4/5 haste or a 5/6. And it says when it enters the battlefield, it fights target creature you don't control, so it can kill a 5/5, which, we talked about Gurm Angler being played earlier, so that's relevant. But it also destroys target land with an activated ability that isn't a mana ability, which there's not that many in Modern, but, for whatever reason, your opponent's fetch land is tapped, you can destroy their fetch land, which, could matter. Maybe they're at like a low life and you want to just get it before they fetch or force them to fetch. I don't know. That's something you could do. It can destroy flipped as Kantas. It can destroy any man land, like a Colonnade or, a Mutavault, whatever. It can destroy like Inventor's Fairs. KCI is gone, but Lantern decks have a lot of weird activated ability lands. You can destroy, Field of Ruins and Ghost Quarters. It's just an interesting ability to be able to tutor for. So, think that it definitely deserves to be on the list of Modern power level cards.
Yes. Hydroid Krasis is bonkers. Like, the card is just bananas.
Yeah, I mean, I'm testing Standard right now, and it's quickly proving to be, I think, the best Standard card in the entire set. Like, 4 Standard, maybe top 3, something like that. It's not as good in Modern because you don't... I mean, obviously the games are a lot quicker. You don't have as much mana, but, like, Amulet Titan can definitely abuse that type of effect. And so, like, it's hard to cast in Tron, but, like... Tron didn't really... There isn't, like, any green X draw spells. It's not, like, a thing that exists, generally. So, like, just have...
I mean, I slammed this right into blue-green Tron.
Sure, I mean, blue-green Tron's definitely not a thing, but, like, it's not hard...
It used to be
I guess it did, but, like...
Weirdly, a long time ago.
At the same time, like, it's not that hard for Tron to make a blue mana. Like, you have stars and spheres. Like, you can do that if you're trying to do that. And... Cast triggers are powerful. I mean, we've seen that with Ulamog, we've seen that with Emrakul. Like, that's a thing in Modern. There are decks that try to play counter spells and they get really punished by cast triggers.
Yep. Agreed. Well, and you also get, like, in blue-green for Tron, you also get Growth Spiral, which is great. Like, there's a home for this card in a Tron shell. Whether or not it proves to be good enough long term, I don't know. But I'm 99% of the way there. I already got it. We had some honorable mentions. Wilderness Reclamation, a card that will likely ruin Standard, probably does not make it into Modern. It's a 4-mana enchantment. You untap all your lands at the end of your turn. So it's going to make Nexus.
I don't think it's going to ruin Standard. Don't worry about it.
Noxious.
It'll be fine.
I don't think it's going to ruin Standard, but it's certainly going to be a drag.
I don't know. I think it's not as good as people think it is. I think it's good, but
I haven't lost a game to it, but I'm also playing like Goblin Burn. So when they're like tap out on turn 4 to play this dumb card, I'm like, oh, okay, great. Untap, ping you, and then like light up the stage, skewer, kill you. Repudiate, Replicate is a split card. Simic, it's one of the Simic split cards. The front half is a hybrid blue-green, or blue-green hybrid, Stifle. And the other side is something else. I think it's like Pongify. The point of it is this is you can now have in mono green a Stifle effect, which has never existed before. Tithe Taker is like a hate bear. Interesting. He's like half a grand abolisher. I don't know that he's going to see a ton of modern play, but he is a hate bear, and people love hate bears. Growth Spiral, I already talked about. It's instant speed explore, basically, and you draw a card and put a land from your hand in the field on the battlefield. Final Payment, black-white. It's a Doomblade, but it has alternate or an additional cost, 5 life, sack a creature, or something else. It's just unconditional instant speed removal. Bankrupt in Blood is another. It's similar to like a Cathartic Reunion kind of thing. It's 2 mana, sack 2 creatures, draw 3 cards. So in that axis, I think it's probably going to see some amount of play. Those are my honorable mentions.
Yeah, I wanted to honorably mention Nikia of the Old Ways. It makes your lands tap for 2 mana, but only to cast creature spells. It's a 5 mana 5/5. Making your lands tap for 2 is powerful. I would like to honorably mention Absorb. I don't think Absorb is modern playable, but it still deserves an honorable mention.
I had a Lightning Bolt absorbed in Modern, and it made me really sad.
Oh, good. That's actually, that makes me happy. Anytime you absorb a Lightning Bolt, it's just great. Okay. Benthic Familiar. It's a 1 mana 1/1 Merfolk that loots, essentially. It's a +1/+1 counter on it. Merfolk is a tribe in Modern. It's always looking for 1-drops because it doesn't have enough good ones. Maybe this one gets there. We'll see. Angel of Grace. It's a flash angel that, like Blue-White Control or Jeskai could be interested in. They've played, they've played Restoration Angel in the past. It's the type of threat that those decks could look towards. Probably not quite good enough, but it's an interesting effect, so worth looking at. And then Teysa Karlov as a 4 mana 2/4 creature that doubles death triggers. I do not have a home for this in Modern, but doubling any sort of trigger is a powerful effect, so we could see it. So she got an honorable mention.
Okay. It's some extremely quick Patron questions, one of which we already covered, which is Blue-Red Phoenix and post-KCI World. Brian asked for some blue-green infect spice at sideboard. So I did a little bit of digging. Aaron Barrett recently played 4 Maindeck Mishra's Bauble.
I love it.
There's a couple of versions that I saw that ran a Maindeck Traverse. A different version that I saw that ran 2 Maindeck Rancors, which obviously I love. And then some sideboard tech. Nissa Voice of Zendikar seems to be fairly common. I found it in a list that was also playing Carrion Call, which is the 4 mana make 2 infect insects So you give him +1/+1 counters with Myth of Voice of Zendikar. Good stuff. There was also an infect list that was running 3 Thing in the Ice in the
That's
sideboard.
actually really hot. I like that. Something else I want to point out with infect right now is that Spellskite is a horror. And Thing in the Ice, when it bounces creatures, bounces non-horror creatures. So, with Blue-Red Phoenix about to be popular everywhere, and that being a bad matchup for Phoenix, this is definitely a time for Spellskite. You want, in your Infect deck, you want 2-3 Spellskites, maybe. Like, you just want Spellskite. It's really good right now.
Yes, agreed. Someone asked, what are the fair decks of the metagame? Rather than list them, I just came up with a little heuristic, which is look at the deck, ask what busted thing is this deck doing, and if the answer is nothing, it is a fair deck.
Yeah, I was going to say, too, that, like, any deck that just isn't cheating on mana, you can probably say is fair in Modern, because fair is kind of warped in Modern at this point, which I think is, why they're asking the question, right? But, like, if they're not actively finding a way to cheat on mana, then the deck is quote-unquote fair. So even decks that, like, don't really seem fair, like, I think I would start to classify as fair if they're not cheating on mana. Like, Death Shadow doesn't really feel fair, but it's definitely fair at this point. But, it's, like, kind of cheating on mana by playing, like, 1 mana 5/5s and 1 mana 7/7s. But, like, those cards have other costs. So, like, I think that it's just fair, right? Like, obviously, like, Jeskai and Jund and Blue-White, those all are, pretty fair. But I would also say just, like, Devoted Druid, like, any deck using creatures also feels fair to me. Like, Devoted Druid decks, even though that's, like, cheating on mana and is kind of unfair because they can make infinite mana, still feels fair because their deck just loses to Lightning Bolt, I guess. And I would also say, even though, like, Arclight Phoenix definitely feels like cheating at times, but I would also say that deck is pretty fair. I mean, the only unfair thing it's doing is putting a hasty Phoenix into play, which, does feel unfair when that happens, but the rest of it feels pretty fair to me.
Yeah, I could get behind that. What's the better Stirrings deck, Titans or Scales? My vote is Titan. I think Scales is powerful, but I feel like it's very fragile. I think Titan is just like Amulet. Sorry, this is Amulet Titan. I think Amulet Titan is just a more robust.
All right, I'm
deck.
going to give my vote on this. And keep in mind, this is from me playing a lot of Titan recently. I think Titan is a really fun deck. I really enjoy playing it, and it's one of my new pet decks. I just love it. That said, I think the best Stirrings deck in Modern right now is a Lantern deck. That's my opinion. But then I also think Tron is better than Titan or Scales. But if you ask for the best Stirrings deck, I would say Lantern Control probably.
Okay, fair. I mean, Lantern Control of the choices, Titan and Scales.
If he was looking for the best Stirrings deck, but like if between Titan or Scales, I would say Titan is better than Scales.
So before we get to the Spice Rack, you can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/turn1Thoughtseize, all spelled out. You can follow us on Twitter @T1Thoughtseize, and Zach is @A22EN. You can watch a stream at twitch.tv/T1Thoughtseize, sponsored by our friends at Card Order. You can see our YouTube videos at youtube.com/turn1Thoughtseize, all spelled out. You can read my columns at blog.cardkingdom.com. You can become a member of the Thoughtseize Cabal at patreon.com/turn1Thoughtseize, all spelled out. And of course, you can see all of our content on turn1Thoughtseize.com. The Spice Rack card today is High Alert. So this has all the colors that you like, and you suggested it, so I'm going to have you take it.
Okay, High Alert is 1 blue-white for an enchantment. It says each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Then it says creatures you control can attack as though they didn't have defender, and you can pay 2, a blue and a white to untap target creature. Yeah, I mean, this is the Walls enchantment we've been waiting for. It works with Doran the Siege Tower. It's good with Arcades. We talked about Arcades when it came out in M19. We're getting there, and soon there will be a Walls deck in Modern. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Assault Formation.
Tower Defense.
High Alert. Tower Defense. Yeah, I mean, it's already happened. So we're up to 4 colors now.
Well, we don't have to play black. Now we're getting to the point where we can just do it in Bant. Just in Bant.
Just Bant
It's
walls.
getting there, man. And there are some good walls in Bant. Like, I think it was like Plume Veil.
Sure.
It's a 4/4 flash for 3 mana. Or
Yep,
no, it was
Plume Veil.
Wall of Denial. I think it's like a 08
Wall of,
hexproof.
Wall of Denial, I think, is the best one.
It's an 08 hexproof,
Yeah,
which
it's
is
a
just wild. Like a 3 mana 8/8 is pretty busted in Modern. Like it's actually Modern playable.
Yeah, I think it actually has Shroud.
Yeah, 3 mana 8/8 Shroud is ridiculous. That's gonna kill people really quick.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know.
Flying
Boom.
Shroud.
That's insane.
Boom. I would play that card. I would play 3 mana 8/8 Shroud Flying.
I think everybody would. That card's really busted. So yeah, I mean, Wall of Omens and Wall of Blossoms, or Blossoms isn't in Modern, is it? It's just Wall of Omens. But there's Wall of Omens and Wall of Roots. So you know, we're starting to get there with the Walls deck. We need, you know, it's getting close. We're gonna keep monitoring it, but it's getting close.
It will happen. So yeah, anyways, thank you so much for the first show of the new year, recorded in the new year. This will be out on Guilds or on Ravnica Allegiance release day, which is the 25th. So thank you so much, and we will catch up with you soon.
Love you guys.